In April 1561, the citizens of Nuremberg woke up to a terrifying display overhead. A chaotic swarm of glowing spheres, crosses, and cylinders darted erratically across the morning sky, leaving trails of thick smoke. As the aerial display faded, a heavy, choking stench of rotten eggs settled over the cobblestones. It was so intense it physically gagged the people breathing it in. Then the behavior of the townspeople fractured. Within hours, thousands of residents descended into acute delirium. Neighbors turned on each other, rioting in the streets in a sudden, violent wave of temporary insanity. 5 years later, the exact same sequence hit Basel, Switzerland. The sky turned blood red, black spheres clashed overhead, that same foul odor dropped, and the streets erupted into violent chaos. For centuries, historians reviewed these accounts and wrote them off as religious hysteria. The theory was that a superstitious population saw a strange meteor shower, panicked about the apocalypse, and simply lost their minds. By treating these events entirely as psychological delusions, we ignored the physical reality of the situation. We overlooked the actual environmental triggers dropping from the sky right before the violence began. If you map out the historical record, you find a recurring pattern. Sudden global spikes in ancient warfare and frantic survival riots frequently happen immediately after massive atmospheric anomalies. We know that modern airbursts, like the Tunguska meteor explosion, level forests and send intense shockwaves that deeply traumatize nearby populations. But consider the possibility that the bizarre, zombie-like aggression recorded in 1561 wasn't driven by panic from a loud noise. What if the people in those cities were experiencing an acute physical infection?
2 recent scientific studies suggest a different cause. They indicate that these historical outbreaks were the result of mass extraterrestrial chemical poisoning. This research points to the ancient madness of our ancestors being a specific biological response to extraterrestrial compounds entering Earth's atmosphere. The first piece of evidence comes from an advanced atmospheric chemistry study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Researchers found that when high-energy meteors, known as bolides, burn up in our atmosphere, they inject massive plumes of raw hydrogen sulfide gas directly into the sky. In this diagram, we can see the intended natural process. As that hydrogen sulfide interacts with sunlight, photochemical reactions begin stitching the gas into larger, organic sulfur molecules, like amino acids. But there is a fatal delay in this atmospheric factory. Before the sun can finish baking these chemicals into harmless proteins, the heavy, unreacted gas drifts down into the cities below, straight into the lungs of the population. Breathing concentrated hydrogen sulfide paralyzes the olfactory nerve and acts as a potent brain poison. The immediate medical symptoms are acute delirium and severe neurotoxic psychosis, matching the frenzied violence of those historical brimstone riots. Those ancient towns weren't suffering from spiritual hysteria. They were choking on highly toxic clouds of brain-poisoning gas delivered by dying space rocks. But the sulfur gas is only the initial shock. A January 2025 paper in Nature Astronomy outlines a second, far more severe biological threat. By analyzing pristine samples from the asteroid Bennu, scientists confirmed that these space rocks carry heavily concentrated loads of excitatory amino acids, the exact chemicals human brains use to trigger physical anxiety and panic. While asteroids deliver those raw anxiety triggers, cometary dust carries something even more targeted, a structural analog of a peptide hormone that forensic researchers call cosmic vasopressin. When a comet's tail scrapes the upper edges of our atmosphere, the intense friction aerosolizes these cosmic peptide chains, shattering them into ionized microshards that scatter on the wind. Taking a look at this brain cross-section, we can see the hijack mechanism in action. When inhaled, these microshards slip right through the blood-brain barrier and bind aggressively to specific receptors in the amygdala, the brain's emotional processing center. In high concentrations, this extraterrestrial vasopressin acts as a literal warfare pheromone. It overstimulates the amygdala and shuts down communication with the prefrontal cortex, completely silencing the brain's rational, inhibitory signals. With logic centers disabled, the chemical forces humans and animals into an extreme state of territorial defense and primal hyperaggression. Extraterrestrial debris physically disables the brain's logic centers, forcing a state of total, irrational aggression. Apply this neurobiology to the historical record, and confusing eras suddenly make sense. Take the mid-second millennium BC, a period marked by a sudden, unexplained global spike in scorched earth warfare and societal collapse. We can now look at this era not as a simultaneous failure of human diplomacy across disconnected cultures, but as a cometary high-loading event. A massive comet tail seeded the global dust cloud with these cosmic warfare pheromones, and the entire world breathed them in. Our planet is subjected to a recurring, invisible rain of chemicals that can reprogram global neurochemistry. We spend billions building massive telescopes and planetary defense satellites to spot city-killer asteroids before they hit the ground. Humanity must start monitoring the microscopic, invisible wakes falling into our atmosphere. The next global conflict could be triggered by a microscopic cosmic pheromone silently hijacking the human brain.